to cover tonight. Can both of you hear me okay? Okay. So the first things first is let's go over what we need to cover so you can kind of see where everything lines up. Icebreaker, I've gone back to the standard icebreaker for this week just because we do have so much to cover. Quick overview of the directions. Not much has changed from April's comprehensive to May's comprehensive, so everything's pretty much standard there. We'll take a quick look at the chart of accounts. Try not to get you completely overwhelmed with it. Go over 7 transactions. These are the ones that students miss quarter after quarter after quarter. Go over the adjusting entries that students usually miss. We will be doing a lot of configuring of depreciation amounts, so you may want to have a calculator or your phone with the calculator handy on it. And then quick rundown of the closing entries. Go over the closing entry that might give you the most trouble. There's only 1 out of the 4 that's different than our typical. Again, go over the financial statements. Nothing new there. And then a quick wrap up, which covers the final exam and due dates for the rest of the quarter. So that's pretty much what we're going to cover tonight. We were actually expecting 7 students tonight, so I'm not quite sure how it's going to go with only 2 students. So Monday it took about 45 minutes with 1 student. So honestly answer this question for me. Have you looked, so this is regarding April's comprehensive, have you looked at it? Have you started it? Have you completed it? Or are you completely stuck and you've been meaning to contact me? Let's see. Okay. So hopefully you start it as soon as possible, just because it will take you quite a bit of time. And if you do get stuck, or if CNOW tells you you have the wrong answer and you can't figure out what's going wrong and you need me to look at it, that way you do have enough time. As a reminder, I do not work on Sundays unless I absolutely have to. So if you send me an email Sunday, more than likely I will not look at it until Tuesday, since Monday is a holiday. I did send an email out earlier today. I have plans to do things around the house that doesn't typically get done during the quarter. So I do not have plans to actually be in front of my computer since Harrison is technically closed that day. So if you need me, the best way to get a hold of me Monday is to text me, and I will get on my computer as soon as I can. Not sure when that would be, but I would try to get on there sometime on Monday to answer your question. So give you a heads up there. So here is the chart of accounts. It is massive this week, but that is because we purchase 4 more assets. 3 of those assets are depreciable. So then you have the asset, the accumulated depreciation, and the depreciation expense. You're also purchasing subscriptions to magazines. And so those are going to have expense accounts as well. So it looks really big and really scary, but it's not. It's basically everything that we've been doing all quarter. So there are no wrenches in this per se. The only difference that you may have noticed is that we have two different revenue accounts. That is the only real difference that you have to worry about. And that is really not that big of a problem because we will only use vending commission revenue for one transaction. And let's see, I'm trying to remember the problem. And it is adjusted. So we use that account twice, other than the closing and the financial statements. So it's really nothing that important or that scary to worry about. So the directions. The first step students usually miss is entering the amounts from April's post-closing trial balance. Those have to be entered into the general ledger before you begin May's problems. So before you even begin May's transactions, you have to enter those amounts into the ledger, or everything will be off for the entire month. So that is the only big difference we have. And I will actually give you those amounts. So before you submit your April comprehensive, you have what the post-closing trial balance amounts should be. So you'll know whether or not you're correct on April's comprehensive. And so that's a big step there. And then you also will know what amounts to use for the beginning balances of the permanent accounts. So that's a big step there as well. And then everything else is pretty standard. So here are what the balances should be. Would either of you like me to send you the picture of what the ending balances should be when I send out the passcode? Okay. I will get that. When I send out the passcode tonight, I will also attach the picture of the ending balances so you know you'll have those for this week and next week. And so these are the permanent accounts, and so these are what should have the balances. Everything else should be closed. So everything from drawing down to the last expense account in April should have a 0 balance. So if you try to submit it with a balance amount, CNOW will count you wrong. And also when you go to May's, make sure you have these amounts entered. Quarter after quarter, usually about half the class does not include the balance amounts for the permanent accounts. So I did make myself a note and I will send those out to you. Do you have any questions up to this point on either April or May? Okay. So, general journal entries and general ledger. Again, there are a couple tricky ones. They're not horrible, but they're different than what we're used to seeing. Also, the wording can be a bit confusing. So if you're stuck or if you want to verify what a transaction says or what accounts you'll use, text me, email me. I'm more than happy to look at it. I have a standard e-version of the textbook on my mobile devices. So I literally go nowhere without my textbook. So, and I've taught this class for 10 plus years. So I pretty much have everything down. So there's nothing that really surprises me in this class. And then again, I'm going to keep harping on this because students forget it every time. make sure you use the balance amounts from the pictures I send you. So again, transactions are essentially things we've been doing all quarter. There are some wrenches thrown in. And so I want to spend time going over the 7 transactions that are missed, that are commonly missed, at least by half the class, if not more, every quarter. So this first one, it's similar to other ones we've been given, but it is still something that we haven't quite dealt with. In order to provide snacks for guests on a 24-hour basis, Knight signed a contract with Snack Attack. Snack Attack will install vending machines with food and drinks and pay a 10% commission on all sales. Estimated payments are made at the beginning of each month. Knight received a check for $200, which is the estimated commission for the sales for May. So what accounts would we use for this transaction? What accounts would we use? Any guesses? So we got 2 answers. So this is again one we usually miss. Okay. So the answers we had are C. I'm still horrible with this, with the writing, and D. So you are correct. It is not A, and it is not B. Why would it be C? What keyword tells us that it's going to be letter C? It does say cash. Key phrase. Knight received a check, so you're automatically going to assume it's cash. And here is where we first get our second revenue account. The vending machines is our second revenue account. It's not customers paying to come to the camp. And so we will use this for an adjusting entry later on. So does this transaction make sense? This is near the front of your work. It's like the second, third transaction, I think, right up at the top that you have to complete. Okay. If something doesn't make sense, please stop me and we will delve into it more. Okay, here is one that's very similar to things we've done all quarter. Here we have paid for May's programming on the new digital satellite system of $125. What 2 accounts would we use for this? So we've exactly, great job. Everybody got that one right. So I'm assuming that one makes sense since you all Got that one right. Kind of like paying your phone bill or your cable bill. The next transaction, again, commonly missed problem. Knight's office manager returned $100 worth of office supplies to Gordon Office Supply. Knight received a $100 reduction on the account. What two transactions would we use to show a reduction on the account? We got one answer, one working on it, two working on it. Okay. So on this one, we have C and D. It is actually C, but why would it be C? It was refunded to the account, which is why it would be accounts payable. But why is it office supplies and not office supplies expense? There is no expense. But what you actually returned, here we're focusing on what we returned. We returned office supplies. So that's what we need. So since we returned that $100 worth of supplies, we no longer have them on the premise. Since we do not longer have them, I can't talk tonight. Since we no longer have them on our property, we cannot keep them as listed as an asset. Does that one make sense? Got one yes. Okay. The next transaction. We paid May's insurance premium for the new camp of $1,000. So what accounts will we use to show that we paid May's insurance premium? Okay, and unfortunately, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Unfortunately, you guys all got it wrong, which is what normally happens, which is why we're going over this transaction. In April, we paid $9,000 for insurance for the camp. And so we're just going to deduct our $1,000 off of our premium that we've already paid. And we know it's going to be cash. So we know definitely it's not C and D. Since we're deducting it off of what we already paid, we're going to use our expense account. If we were purchasing a new policy, then it would be prepaid. But since it's the same policy that we already have, we're just adding on to it. We're going to stick with letter B. Does that one make sense? Okay. I know these are confusing, which is why We're going over them. Okay. Correct. It needed to say new insurance instead of a new camp. It could be in this case that he's just expanding his current camp that he already had. So he's just adding more ground, but not a new business or not a new location, because then it would be a completely different policy. So, but again, this is one missed every quarter, which is why I wasn't surprised that it was missed here. So another one that is commonly missed is this one. Knight paid $40 for each 1-year subscriptions to Fishing Illustrated, Fishing Unlimited, and Fish Master. The magazines are published monthly. How much are we going to do this transaction for? How much are we going to record it? So is it going to be $40, $80, or $120? I have one answer, two answers. We're split 50-50 right now. 50-25. Ooh, this is interesting. We have every answer selected. Okay, so let's break this transaction down. Students usually read quickly, and so they may not catch everything. So make sure when you're doing this, the kids are either asleep, they are just completely distracted. If you don't have kids, make sure you're in an environment where you can focus. If you have pets, you may want to give them something to keep busy so you can focus on these. So here we paid $40. So you would think that is the correct answer. How many magazine subscriptions did he purchase? So how many magazines did he subscribe to? No, they're 1-year subscription, so that's 12 months. But he did 3 subscriptions. So we have 1 subscription, 2 subscriptions, 3 subscriptions. At $40 each, that gives you $120. Again, you're going to have to read slowly. Students usually see. That's how much this transaction is for. Fully. So, again, the book likes to throw wrenches and things and give you amounts and assume students aren't going to read carefully. So remember this one, we have an adjusting entry that goes along with it when we get there. This one is another tricky one. I rarely have students get this one correct because we haven't dealt with anything like this so far in the quarter. So here we're paying wages to fishing guides of $30,000. That in and of itself is nothing new. The wrench is where it says, don't forget wages payable. So what 3 accounts will we use? Well, I already told you it's not A. since I said there's 3 accounts. So we know it's not A. So that leaves you B, C, or D. Okay. So nobody said B, which is great. So we're left with C and D. What 2 accounts do you normally use when you're paying your employees? So in a regular weekly assignment transaction, what accounts do we use when we pay employees? Exactly, wages, expense, and cash. When we're normally paying employees, we use wages, expense, and cash. So we normally use wages, expense. Oh, there's no cash on this one, so we can automatically rule that one out. So when you do this transaction, you're going to use wages, expense. So you're going to debit wages, expense like you normally would. So pardon my penmanship. So I'm going to abbreviate here. You're going to do wages, expense, and you normally credit cash. In this case, since we still have a balance left over from April, we have to pay, we're going to do wages payable. So if we went back and looked at the picture I'm going to send you that has April's post-closing balances, we find out wages payable is $500. We know cash. What is cash going to be? How much did we actually pay our employees? Exactly. Our cash has to be $30,000. So how much is wages expense going to be? Knowing that because we use the double entry method, both sides of the transaction have to equal each other. So your debits have to equal your credits. Exactly. This amount is going to have to be 29,500. Does that transaction make sense? This is one very few students actually get correct. Even the students I would expect to get correct don't get this one correct. So I want to make sure you guys completely understand it. Okay. The last transaction, I don't believe we've dealt with this quarter. A guest became ill and could not stay the entire week. Let me get the poll up for it. So a refund was issued in the amount of $1,000. What accounts will we use to show that there was a refund for $1,000? Okay, we got 2 answers. 3, 4. Again, unfortunately, no right answers on this one. So let's break this one down. When a customer pays us to come to the camp, where do we record that? What accounts when we earn money? Exactly. So we use registration fees. So we know it's not going to be B since registration fees isn't there. And then we record cash when we get money from our clients for doing something. So basically what you're going to do here is you're just going to reverse that transaction. So we're reversing the transaction when our customers give us money for a service. So it's going to be A. So instead of debiting cash and crediting the revenue, we're going to debit the revenue and credit the cash. So we need to show that we are decreasing our cash. So we're decreasing our cash. And decreasing our revenue. So this is going to be a debit. This is going to be a credit. Does that transaction make sense? Okay, any questions on any of the 7 transactions that we went over before we switch gears to adjusting entries? Okay. So the main thing on the adjusting entries you're going to have to remember is the depreciation formula. For transaction 2, it was cash and satellite programming expense. Everyone got that one correct. So it's basically like you're paying your cable bill or your phone bill or your utility bill. So most of your adjusting entries are going to be calculating depreciation. On your after conference assignment, you're going to be calculating depreciation so that I know that when you go to do your homework, you have the calculation of depreciation down pat. A lot of your assignment is going to depend on whether or not you can correctly do the adjusting entries. So again, the formula is at the end of chapter 5 in the appendix. It's the first one listed. So if you forget it, that's where to go. It's basically what we purchased the item for minus what we can sell it for. Gives us our book value. Our book value divided by how long we can use it. So if this was a building, it would be probably 30 to 50 years, depending on how new the building is, or the condition that it's in when you purchase it. That gives us our annual depreciation. And then we need to take our annual depreciation and divide it by 12. All of your answers are going to be monthly. Even on your after conference assignment, it is going to be monthly depreciation. Okay, just to make sure, I'm going to say it one more time because even on the after conference assignment from last week, there's a lot of students that gave me annual. I need monthly. Okay. Now that I got my say out, let's go for this one. This is the first adjusting entry you're going to have to do. And we're going to go back to the first transaction that we went over. Way back to the first one. Remember, we were told that vending commission sales we're going to get a 10% commission. And so who remembers how much we were given for the month of May as kind of like an advance? Anybody remember? If not, it's completely okay. No takers? Okay. We were given a check for $200 because they expected sales would be $2,000 for the month of May. It turns out that the sales were $2,300 and we're given a 10% commission. So what is 10% of $2,300? Exactly. 10% is 230. The easiest way to calculate that is, since both of the amounts have a zero, cross out a zero, we get 230. That's the easy way. We already have a balance of $200. So how much will our adjusting entry be for? Exactly. We're only adjusting for $30. I have had almost every answer under the sun for this problem. I've had the full amount of 2,300. I've had 200. I've had 230. I've had numbers that I have no idea where students have got them from. So when you're doing your adjusting of the revenue, your amount in the adjusted trial balance needs to be the 230, and we are adjusting only for $30. Let me give you another tip. You do not adjust your cash account. That is a no-no. Since we have not received the $30 yet, what account are we going to adjust along with the revenue? Any guesses? Exactly. We are adjusting accounts receivable. So for this account, for this transaction, you are doing accounts receivable and our vending commission revenue. If you try to adjust your cash, that is going to really mess up your amounts. And with both comprehensives being 30% of your grade, I do not want that to happen. So again, you're going to be $30, accounts receivable, and vending commission revenue. Okay. And this is going to be a debit. So that's going against everything we've done so far. So accounts receivable is going to be a debit, and vending commission revenue is going to be a credit. I'm hoping I can get this video up tomorrow so that if you guys aren't taking notes, you aren't taking pictures, you're not sure you're going to remember, this should be up tomorrow afternoon so you can review it, or whenever you get to do the assignment, you will have this to review. So, any questions on this adjusting entry? Okay. The next one. We already have the $200 is at the very first transaction. So it's like the second or third transaction overall for the problem. So that was at the beginning of the conference. I think you missed that part. Yeah. So the adjusting entry is going to be the $30. We already have $200 from the beginning. The second one is $200. Yeah, we already have $200 from the first transaction that we went over. Okay. This adjusting entry, we get a lot of information. So We purchase more boats in May. So here is the information we're given from April. From here down to here is what we already know from April. So for May, we purchased 2 boats. And then we have to calculate straight line depreciation on the new boats. And so we're going to make one adjusting entry. See now will definitely count you wrong if you try to do 2. So here's the first amount. It's the same amount of depreciation we had in April. Now we have to calculate the depreciation for the new boats purchased. So how would we calculate the depreciation for the 2 new boats? Any guesses? Well, we have the purchase price. There's no salvage value, so we have 9,000 divided by 5. How much does that give us for annual depreciation? Great, so that's 1,800. So how much is the monthly depreciation? Great job. So the monthly depreciation is 150. So how much is our total monthly depreciation going to be for all 12 boats? Nope, that's for an annual. We have 150 from our 2 boats that we just purchased, plus that amount. So our annual depreciation, our monthly depreciation for May is going to be $1,150. So we have May's depreciation for the 2 new boats, plus the depreciation for the 10 boats that were purchased in April. Does this one make sense? I've never had to combine 2 months together before. Got 1 yes. Make sure everybody understands. Got 2 yeses. That's okay. Take all the notes you need to. Okay, are we ready to go to the next adjusting entry? I think everybody did it yes. Okay, more depreciation. We purchased a new sound system. How much will our depreciation be? Have you calculate it yourself and see if you can get the right amount for 1 month, remember. Key phrase, 1 month. Students usually give me annual. And again, these problems come directly out of May's Comprehensive. So you guys are already 1 step ahead of the students that have not attended yet. Oh, so close. So we have A and C selected. Okay, so we have 3,600. There's no salvage value, so we can automatically go divided by 5. What does that equal? Exactly 720. We'll divide that by 12. Gives us 60. So we should be at $60. Does that one make sense before we go to the next one? Okay. I have no idea who says correct answers or no idea who says wrong answers. So this is completely anonymous. Here we do have a salvage value. So you're going to have to take that into effect when you're doing your calculations. We purchased a big screen TV. Personally, that's an awful lot of money to spend on a TV, but hey, we purchased it for $8,000. We think we can salvage $800 out of it when we're done, and we have it for 8 years. How much is our depreciation? That's a horrible 8. So we have 8,000. So we got through 75% correct. So we have 8,000 minus 800. That gives us 7,200. So that gives us our book value. Now we have 7,200 divided by 8 years. So what does that give us? $72. So that gives us 900. Then we take our 900 divided by 12. Gives us our $75. Does everybody understand how we calculated that one? So we haven't really had any with a salvage value before. Okay. Next one, we have 3 more adjusting entries just because these are what you're going to have to calculate on your homework. Okay, we purchased a building for $530,000. 50-year useful life and $50,000 salvage value. So what answer would we get for this one for monthly depreciation? See, by attending the conference, you get the answers on the adjusting entries. Make sure you're giving me monthly. Gotten 2 answers. No hurry. Okay, again, we got 75% right. So we have 530 minus our 50,000 for salvage value. Gives us 480. So we have our 480 divided by 50. That gives us the 9,600. We divide that by 12. That gives us our $800. Does that one make sense to everybody, how we calculated that? Okay. You will be happy. The next adjusting entry has no depreciation involved. So that saves everybody a little calculation. So here we have to think back to April. We paid our $9,000 for insurance, but we need to record May's portion of the premium, of the $9,000 premium. How can we figure out how much this amount is? There is two ways that I know of. So in the chat, type how we could calculate or how we could figure out how much May's portion is. I thought of one way, a student thought of another way. That is exactly what a student said, Kendall. Take 9,000, divide it by 6. That is one way to get the answer. My way, I thought, was a lot easier because it involved no calculation. My idea was just flip back to April's problem and see how much they said in April. So either way works. If you take the 9,000 divided by 6, it is 1,500. So that is how much you're going to adjust your prepaid insurance and insurance expense account for. So this one was pretty much up to interpretation. I personally thought it would be easier to flip back to April's. A student said, why don't you just divide the 9,000 by 6? So either way you go, you're going to get the same answer. So whatever you thought of is fine as long as you reach this amount. So, okay, the last adjusting entry. Again, there is a very smidgen amount of calculation. So go back to remember the subscriptions that we purchased. How much did we pay for the subscriptions? Exactly, we paid $120. So we paid $120 for the 3 subscriptions for the year. If I can type, if I could write, that would be amazing tonight. So how much is our adjusting entry going to be for? So let me open up the poll so I can see what everyone thinks. How much are we going to adjust? If we purchased 3 subscriptions for $120. So I've got 2 answers. 3 answers. So far, it's what students normally do. One hasn't started. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll because we are almost done and I don't want to keep you guys longer than I have to. So since almost everyone said 120, I'm going to cross off these answers. When we paid $120, was it for an annual subscription or was it for monthly subscriptions? Exactly, it was for monthly subscriptions. So it's going to be similar to our depreciation. We're going to have to divide the 120 by 12. So how much should our adjusting entry be for? It should be for $10. That is how much we've used for the month of May. Does that one now make sense? Again, students usually, they're quick on their feet and you guys are short on time, which I completely understand. So, but yeah, we purchased annual subscriptions, so we need to calculate monthly. It's very similar to the depreciation. Any questions on any of the adjusting entries? Okay. Hopefully you guys have these down come homework time. So, okay. The second to last thing that we're doing before we get to the wrap up, closing entries. Everything is standard, except since we have 2 revenue accounts, you have to close 2 accounts to income summary. In April, you just had registration fees and income summary. Horrible handwriting, I'm sorry. Now you're going to have registration fees and vending commission revenue. You're going to add those 2 amounts together to give you the income summary closing amount. Everything else is standard. Does the first closing entry make sense where you're going to list both revenue accounts? Yes, no. Okay, so if we go back, if we look at the problem, let's see, let me go back to the chart of accounts. Slide 4. Gotta go the quick way, pardon your eyes. Okay, chart of accounts. When we do our closing entries, we always close and read, we have our revenues is closed to income summary. Is closed to, where's income summary? There it is. So revenue is usually closed to income summary. Since we have 2 revenue accounts, they're both going to be closed to income summary. So we're going to debit registration fees, debit vending commission revenue, putting it in the chat box because it would make it easier to read. So we're going to list registration fees right below it, vending commission revenue. We're going to add those 2 amounts. So in vending commission revenue, it's going to be the $230. So you're going to add whatever registration fees is. Pardon the puppy in the background. He's trying to get my attention. So we have our 230. So we have registration fees, registration fee amount, plus our $230. That is going to equal our income summary. So I'm not giving you the amount of registration because that will make it a little too easy. So you're going to have your registration fees plus your 230 that we said was our vending commission revenue. That is going to give us our amount that we're going to close to income summary. Does that make sense? Okay. Everything else on closing entries is the same. Any questions that you can think of right now on closing entries? It's pretty standard other than the first one. Okay. Have a lot of radio silence, so I'm going to assume that's a no. Financial statements, these are going to be done exactly like April's. So there are no surprises there. If you need to, I'm more than happy, again, to go in and look at your amounts to double check before you click the submit button. Now, the wrap up. This is where you get dates and additional information. April Comprehensive is due this Sunday. May Comprehensive is due a week from Sunday, so that is September 9th. So week 11, you just have May Comprehensive and a discussion. And the discussion is basically a tell me what you think of the course, what you learned, what you like to see more of, what you didn't like. It gives us a chance to evaluate the course. I'm also going to put a plug in to complete your course surveys for all of your courses, but I'm going to push my course since this is a relatively new redesign of the course. I want to know what you actually think of the course. What did you really like? What didn't you like? What can I do better as an instructor? What can I change? How can I change what I'm doing to better suit students? So it helps when you complete these for your instructors, it helps everybody see what they can do better. And it lets those that design the course what they can do better to make the courses more accessible and student friendly. So definitely try to complete those when you get them. You do have until the last day of the class to complete them. So, but you should be getting it either, I believe it's next week when you should be getting those. They take 10 minutes, if that. So please complete those if you can. I will email you the password for the after conference assignment, as well as the picture of what the post-closing trial balances should be for April. So you have that to check your April homework, and so you have it to begin May. Your final exam, that is a hot topic for everybody. It does start Monday, September 10th. Once you click the start button, you do have 2 hours to complete it. It has to be consecutive or you will time out. Unfortunately, I cannot remove the time limit, so you do have to stick to that 2 hour time limit. You have until September 16th at 11:59 to complete it. I would suggest not waiting until then in case you do have computer problems, or if your screen just keeps circling, because it is in CNOW. So try to plan accordingly. If your screen keeps twirling, I can see what I can do to hopefully reset it so you can take it. The final is 13 questions. You have fill in the blank, you have one matching, and a lot of them are, we give you the information or a partial worksheet, tell me what the amount would be at the end of the month. So it'll ask sometimes for net gain, net loss, income, what the income summary amount should be, what it'll ask you to complete an income statement based on the partial worksheet. So definitely make sure you give yourself time. Again, it is closed book. However, again, Harrison has no way to regulate that. In the class, let me see. I'm not in the class. Let me pull up one of our classes real quick, since I combined both my Accounting 1 classes. You have 2 reviews for the final exam. One of them is put in by the people that designed the course. So in week 11, you have 11.0, which is the one put in by Harrison, which gives you, basically tells you to review the chapters, review the PowerPoints, and review your adaptive study points. That doesn't really tell you much of anything. So what I have done, and I need to double check it, is I have gone through and focused on exactly what is in the final. So this will give you an idea of exactly what to study for the final exam. So it is a Word document. I give you specific problems to try to help. So definitely like 2-8, 3-7, 3-13. So these are problems very similar to the ones that you're going to complete on your final exam. So it just gives you a more concentrated field of study than say, okay, study the entire quarter. So hopefully that helps. Do you have any questions about anything that we've gone over tonight? Okay, if you go to week, I believe I said week 11. Let me go to the student view so it's a little more recognizable. Okay, so student view, go to your modules, and it should be week 11. It is where it has the paperclip. It's Accounting 1 final exam review. And then again, your final is in CNOW. It is computer graded, so when you finish it, you should automatically receive your score for it. It can take 24 hours to upload into Canvas. So I've been double checking scores between CNOW and Canvas to make sure everything is accurate. So, any other questions? Okay, if you have no other questions, that is all I have. And before I get off the computer tonight, I will make sure I get the picture sent out to you as well as the passcode for the conference. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully it's starting to cool down outside.